Hello, crafty friends, and welcome to Mislaid Pages. My name is Jessie, and I'm here for a whip and chat today. I'm doing something a little bit different because I have not knitted on the channel before, like actually shown you how I knit. So I thought I might take this opportunity to show you some knitting. I'm not sure how this is going to work because I haven't knit under camera before, and because my skin is so pale, you can see that the camera is doing some interesting things here. So I'm hoping this is not gonna, I'm hoping this will work out. We'll see. I suppose if it doesn't work out, I can maybe strip the audio and put something else in. We'll see. We shall see. So let's get into it. So this is the pattern I'm working on is called Lichen. Let me show you the pattern. So this is lichen. This is the pattern I'm working on. This is what it's ultimately supposed to look like. We'll see if mine actually looks like that. Yeah, I'll explain. I'll explain here in a second. It may be that I'm actually going to end up pulling a bunch of stitches out. So we'll see. We'll see. But this is what I'm working on. The yarn that I'm working with is actually, this is yarn I purchased in Ireland on my last trip to Ireland, which was in 2019. I purchased this in the Cashel Woolen store, which is in Cashel in Tipperary, Ireland, in County Tipperary. So Cashel is the little town that is at the foot of the Rock of Cashel, or Cashel is in the little town, the Rock of Cashel is in the little town of Cashel in County Tipperary. And I talked about this on my channel before. The Rock of Cashel is a huge ruin of a building that has been used for a lot of different things. It's been a fort, it's been a castle, it's been a church and a cathedral. So it's been a lot of different things. I think most recently it was a cathedral. And when I say recently, I still mean hundreds of years ago. And so, you know, the country is working on keeping the castle maintained. They actually have a section of it, because I've gotten a chance to visit the Rock of Cashel twice. They actually have a section of it that when I went this last time is sectioned off and is completely temperature and humidity controlled. That section was not cordoned off or sectioned off in that way when I visited in 2016 for the first time. So they're continuously working on preserving and maintaining that, the ruin, the building, the stonework, all that sort of stuff. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It sits high up on a hill in Cashel, and you have some gorgeous views. And at some point, maybe I'll share a slideshow. I don't know if I'll put it in this whip and chat, but at some point I'll share a slideshow of some of my pictures from the Rock of Cashel. It's one of the most well, everywhere in Ireland is picturesque in my opinion, but there are some great picturesque views. It's got one of my most favorite ruins, which is the toppled remains of a giant Celtic cross. Now, I'm not religious, but Celtic crosses are gorgeous. And this particular one is massive. It's the ruin of it, the piece that's left that has fallen, is larger than a person. It's just gigantic. So, anyway. So I purchased this in the Cashel Woolen store right at the foot of the Rock of Cashel, and I was very, very excited to have this. So it's purple, it's kind of slubby, and according to the shop owner, this is actually the same woolen yarn that they use in the fancy woolen knits that they sell out of Ireland. So for the most part in Ireland, it's hard to get actual products. What do you call it? My brain is not working this morning. Not enough coffee, I guess. It's hard to get supplies is what I'm trying to say. So it's hard to get wool or yarn to make things out of. Most of the time you're buying finished products. And I think that's largely due to the fact that, you know, Ireland is making lots of things to export versus selling things to their citizens to make things out of. So instead of selling because they have tons and tons of sheep in Ireland, that's a thing. So they're making tons and tons of wool, but they're making that wool into things, and then making the yarn from the wool into things, and then selling those finished products more than they are the craft supplies. So it's hard to find this stuff, but I found it and I was very, very excited. It came already caked up for me, and I decided I would use it for this project. So that was a lot. There's a lot to tell you where that yarn came from. So I don't actually know, other than the fact that it's wool. I don't know what the blend is or anything like that. It's wool and it's 100 grams. That was the information that I had. I bought this right when I was starting to get into knitting, so I didn't have a whole lot of ideas about yarn contents and things like that. I'm still not an expert by any means, but yeah, I didn't look for yarn content. I wanted to purchase yarn from Ireland, and I did, and so now I'm making a thing. So this particular pattern, because I don't know the exact weight, I don't even have the weight, other than it's 100 grams of some weight of yarn. I did a bunch of calculations that I can't remember now and determined that I thought it was a DK-ish weight, but it's actually really, really thick. So this pattern calls for, it has instructions for both DK and for Aran weight. Aran weight is a thick yarn, heavier than worsted weight. So worsted weight is one of the thickest yarns that most patterns call for, and worsted weight is what you typically find in your craft stores. So if you're buying just Bernat or Lion brand or Karen brand yarns, most of the time those are worsted weight yarns. That's the typical weight that you'll find for mass-produced yarns and things like that. And so this and DK weight is actually thinner. DK stands for double knit, and it pretty much is double fingering. So if you took two strands of fingering weight and put them together, that's about what DK is. So DK is supposed to be a lighter weight yarn, but as I'm knitting this together, it's knitting up really, really thick. And I actually went up a size on my needle. So I started it on the suggested size of a US 5 needle, which is the DK weight needle, but it was coming out super, super tight. I talked about this on Knitcast recently. So I went up to a size US 7, and you can see I'm still getting a pretty tight knit. And part of that is probably because I knit pretty tightly. And, so we have a couple of things going on. So I was following the DK instructions up until I got to this point. And you may notice there is I have a cord in here. It's not for looks. I did that as a safety net or a safety line. What do they call that? A lifeline. So most folks will use an extra strand of yarn as a safety line or as a lifeline. I was like, well, I didn't have yarn to hand at the moment. It was easier for me to grab this extra cord from my interchangeable needles. And I was also thinking, oh, this will be easier to weave in, this will be easier to pull out, so on and so forth. So I used this this cord for my interchangeable needles, only to discover that there's a reason that people use extra yarn for their lifelines. So when you put something that's, and even though this is really flexible, it's still much more rigid than a piece of yarn, a strand of yarn. And so it was a little bit difficult to work around this as I was going in. But the reason I put that lifeline in is because for DK, the pattern actually tells me to knit this. I was actually supposed to do an extra section here. So this is the section that you would stop at if you were knitting in Aran weight. So if you're in the heavier weight, you would stop at this section. But for DK, you're supposed to do an additional section that then increases the length. It doubles the length. You do an increased row that doubles the overall length. So based on the DK, it should come out to about here, if you can see my hand. And then you bind off half those stitches. And so but I felt like that was going to be excessive, really, really excessive, because this is almost 12 inches wide here. So if I doubled that, and now Momo's going to bug me again. I don't know if you can hear her. I'm using my lapel mic, so I don't know how much you can hear outside of my voice. But Momo has been antsy today, and she went and hid for a little while because I fussed at her. And apparently now, because I'm talking to the camera, she's decided it's safe to come out and fuss at me again. So, Momo. Yeah, so it's one of those days. So anyway, I decided that it was going to be obnoxiously wide if I went ahead and did that. So I kept it at the Aran weight length here, and just started the bind off section and have now moved on to the next little wing. So if this makes any sense to you, um, so we basically have, I think this is the start over here, might be, yeah, I think this is the start over here. So I've done this first section and I've started the second wing, and then we'll have a third, and it does these ruffles, and that's what this bind off creates, is these ruffle layers. So that's what I have done. And I put that lifeline in there because if it turns out that it doesn't look right, what I can do is I can pull out my working needle, and then I can just rip this back all the way back to that lifeline and not have to worry about losing any stitches. So, but word to the wise, this using your extra cords from your interchangeable needles, probably not the easiest way to create a lifeline. You probably do want to just use yarn or something much thinner, because even though this is flexible, it was kind of a bear. So that's where we are with this. It was a really long explanation just to tell you what I'm working on and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So consequently, going forward, I'm still following the Aran weight, or I'm sorry, the DK weight instructions for the number of rows that I'm creating. Because I think it wouldn't look proportionally correct because the Aran weight only calls for about half as many rows in each section. So I'm still doing as many rows as the DK weight calls for, but I'm doing the width of the Aran weight, which I actually wrote a note on the pattern for myself, because if I put this down at any point, I will forget what the heck I was doing. So anyway, so that's where we are. Let's get on with it. I chose to work on this project while I did a whip and chat. Let me get this down a little bit lower and see if we can see if you can actually see what I'm doing. But I chose to work on this for a whip and chat because it's a super simple repeating pattern, and all I have to do is just make sure that I'm keeping track of my rows. I don't have to count the actual stitches until I get to a bind off section, and even that is not terribly difficult. So let's get right into it. So what shall we talk about today? Well, I keep talking about the fact that I went on vacation last week. I'm going to talk about a couple of different things too. And a little word of warning, I'm going to try to, a couple of words of warning. I'm going to try to keep track of what you're seeing in the camera as I'm working, but I'm going to be looking at my work rather than at the camera. So hopefully this will all work out and you'll actually be seeing something that's worth seeing, but I don't know. The second word of warning is I have some family stuff to talk about. I'm not going to get super into details. Let me see if I can hold on just one second. Okay, I shifted the camera just a bit so that you can see better what I'm actually doing. I think this will work better for all of us. So this way I can look at the camera to see what I'm doing, which hopefully will work. I can kind of do both, but I can see my work better. So if I can see my work better, you can see my work better. So okay, so what I was talking about was I'm going to talk about some family stuff too, which includes some heavier topics. I'm not going to get super into details, as I said, but it does include some heavier topics. So just word of warning, if you're not in a place to deal with heavy topics, including end of life, then, do what you need to do for your mental health, just FYI. Okay, I'm going to have to pull this back because it's too close. Too close to my hands. It's not working for me. Okay. So before I get into vacation stuff, let me talk a little bit about what happened before vacation. So I've actually been out of town twice in less than a month. Adam and I got word back at the middle of June, must have been the middle of June, that his grandmother was very ill. Adam's family is very long lived on his father's, well, actually in general. His mother has already passed. She passed shortly after Adam and I got together. So she's been gone for quite a while. Um, but his father is still around. His grandfather actually outlived his mother. And now his grandmother, we heard that his grandmother on his father's side, so his mother's father was still around after she passed, but his father's mother was still around, but we got word that she was very ill. So, and it was ill to the point where it's like, you need to make plans to come and see her. We don't know how long she's gonna still be with us. So we got that news, and come to find out that she had very advanced throat cancer, to the extent that it had filled her thoracic cavity, basically, within her lungs and chest. So it was very, very, very advanced. So we immediately made plans to go up to see his family, and we spent most of a week up there. Well, actually, we spent most of a week away from home. Two days of that was just the driving back and forth because it's quite a ways from here. His family lives in upstate New York. And when I say upstate New York, we're talking about 20 minutes away from the Canadian border. We're talking real upstate, not like Syracuse upstate. So so it's quite a long drive. So two of the days that we were gone, uh, we uh, we were actually just driving, but we got to spend a couple of days with his grandmother, and we got to see family of his on both sides because a lot of his mother's family, his cousins on that side, live in that area still, and uh, some of his cousins on his dad's side, his grandmother's um, grandchildren live up there as well. So we got to visit with her a lot, which obviously was the whole purpose. We got to visit with some of his cousins, with his uncles, a little bit with his dad, so it was a good trip. It was a sad trip because we knew going up that it was the last chance to see her. We knew that was the deal. And so it made it very, I wouldn't even say bittersweet. It was important that we go, and it was meaningful, and it was a good trip, but it was a sad trip. So but we went and did that. I'm very, very thankful that we were able to do that. The fact that I'm working from home made that so much easier because I took my laptop with me. I actually didn't work at all while I was gone, but if I had needed to, I could have. Um, and the bigger thing for me is that meant that I didn't have to, because normally what will happen, I'm getting kind of all tongue-tied. Normally, what'll happen when we do travel like that, especially if we're having to drive a long, long time, is I like to take at least one day off after we get home because you don't know what you're going to run into. You might have emergencies where you can't get home in time, or you get stuck somewhere, or you might just be exhausted, which is often the case. And so normally I need that extra day of padding and things like that. Well, because of working from home, I didn't have to do any of that. So that was really, really good. And because of working from home, I had lots of vacations saved up. So we were able to pretty much just drop everything and go up there, which was very, very good. Now, we knew when we left that we were talking a matter of days, possibly weeks, before we would get the final news. And it turned out to be about a week and a half before she did pass. And, so we got that news just before I went on vacation. And so Adam and I had already discussed it, and he had told me, regardless of anything, that I was still good to go because the vacation was scheduled for. It was planned with me and a friend of mine, so it was going to be a girls' trip anyway. Adam was not going because he had to work. So we had already discussed that possibility and all that sort of stuff. Well, it ended up happening that even though she passed a couple of weeks ago, because of COVID and because of all the family members involved and all the various things that needed to be done, they're not actually doing her memorial until the first weekend in August. So, as it turns out, none of that affected my going on my trip. And I was thankful for that because it meant that I didn't have to leave Adam alone to go to her services and things like that. So we will be leaving again in just a couple of weeks to go back to see his family and to say our final farewells to his grandmother and all that sort of stuff. So that's still on the horizon, but that's what happened right before vacation. So I really, really needed the vacation at that point. It had been a pretty emotional couple of weeks, very busy with work because of starting the new fiscal year. And so then it was time for vacation. So now that we've talked about the serious stuff, um, the less fun stuff, let's talk about the more fun stuff. And that's not to make light of anything. It's I think I have an interesting kind of perspective on end of life and losing folks at this point in my life because I've unfortunately lost so many people who were close to me. And I'm not going to try to say too much more about it because I'm going to get emotional. I don't want to. I just don't want to. I want to talk about happy stuff. But the point is that I've lost a lot of people. And so I feel a bit like, maybe the right term is I feel a bit like a grief veteran. Like I know how to do this. I've been through this enough times that I know what's going to happen. I know how this works. And this one is definitely different than losses that I've experienced before because even though it was unexpected, we did not, none of us knew, none of the family knew that she was sick or that she had any issues until we suddenly found out that it was very advanced and terminal. So it was a surprise, certainly, a shock and a surprise. But she was in her 90s. You know, she had lived a full life, and that's not to say that, you know, that we wouldn't have loved for her to stay around another 100 years. But it's a very different feeling, I think, when you know that someone has had all of that experience, and you know they were already, how do I say this? When it's an older relative, it's just a different experience. My parents were, um, relatively speaking, very young when they passed. Now they weren't young. My both my parents, well, my dad was in his 60s, late 60s, and my mom was in her very early 70s. My stepdad, oh, was he in his late 50s? Because he was 12 years younger than mom. I'm not going to try to do the math. He was either in his late 50s or early 60s. So all of my parents, I lost when they were relatively young for these things. Because you shouldn't be losing your parents when they're in their 60s. You know, it's just not, it's too young. And my grandparents all passed when I was young as well. So I mean, my dad's dad passed but long before I was born. He passed when my dad was just 15. So I don't have a lot of older folks in my family. I don't have any older folks in my family, and you know, so to me, it's just this kind of like mind-boggling idea that you have relatives who are 90. So to me, that's like a long, long life, and that seems really fantastic. And it's just kind of a different perspective. Um, but like I said, even though it was a shock, it's a different kind of situation than like when your parent is in their 60s, or goodness forbid, we lost a friend. He was in his 40s. He had a massive heart attack and passed away completely unexpectedly. It was one of those, they actually call the kind of heart attack he had a widowmaker, because they come on suddenly with symptoms that don't match heart attack symptoms, and more often than not, the folks who suffer those kinds of heart attacks pass away, and that's certainly what happened with my friend. You know, so that is a whole different situation than when your grandparent who has lived their whole life suddenly becomes ill. So, and that's not to, again, not to make light, not to make it seem like anything is less than or more than. It's just different. It's different with every person. So anyway, where was I even going with that? The point is that, you know, I think even she felt like she had lived a whole life. What I didn't realize until we went and spent some time with her is that she had actually, I apologize for the shaky cam. I'm moving the camera again because it's too close, too close. Okay. Um, what I didn't realize until we went and spent that time with her was that she'd been a widow for 30 years. She'd been a widow for most of my lifetime. I didn't realize that Adam's grandfather had passed away so long ago, his dad's dad. But yeah, so she had been a single woman for since her 60s. That's what's crazy. You know, that's what's even more mind-boggling to me. So my mom passed away. My dad passed away in his 60s. My mom passed away in her very early 70s. And Adam's grandmother had been a single woman since her 60s. Can you imagine? She had been a widow since her 60s. And I was just like, wow, that was just, I couldn't even imagine. So, and I wondered, and I still wonder, you know, why she never remarried. And probably because of her generation, because of her age when her husband passed. And you know, this 30 years ago would have been what, the late 80s, early 90s. I think it'd been 32 years. But anyway, so probably the time frame that it happened and her age at the time, probably all of that just kind of combined to her deciding that she didn't need to look for anybody else. And maybe, you know, I don't know how much or what their relationship was like, but maybe they were one of those once in a lifetime loves. So anyway, okay. Now I'm just getting like off on random topic. Let's talk about vacation. Let's talk about vacation. So. Um, let's see. So all that happened, and then on July 5th, right after the 4th of July, which I'm no longer really recognizing as Independence Day personally, but right after the 4th of July, my friend and I, we boarded a plane. The first time I've been on a plane since February 2020, right before the global panini locked everything down. We boarded a plane and we went to Las Vegas. Now, I've been to Vegas before. I've been to Vegas twice before. But let me tell you, so the first time I went to Las Vegas, I was 20 years old. I wasn't technically supposed to be in the casinos, but I was hanging out with my brother and we were like real sneaky, and we just kind of, you know, I mean, I was less than a year from actually being legal, so it wasn't that big a deal. But yeah, the first time I was in Vegas, there was a lot of stuff I couldn't technically do because I wasn't old enough. So anything that required an ID, I was like SOL. But the second time I was in Vegas, I was over 21. I think I was 22 at the time. I might have been 23 because at that time I was with my now ex-husband. That was before we were married, but after we started dating. And it was a big family trip to Vegas. So my mom, my stepdad, my then boyfriend, who would be my ex-husband, and my brother. I don't think my dad went. I think it was just my mom, and my stepdad. We all went to Vegas. And so I was in my early 20s. I was old enough to do stuff, but I was with that particular person. And so certain things were not as fun because issues. Anyway, I'm not even going to delve into all of that. But suffice to say that because of him, some parts of the trip were less fun than they could have been. Also, interesting side note, that was the time that he punched me in the face in his sleep. So that's sort of an indication of kind of how the trip went. Um, and I'll put this note in here. He was not physically abusive to me. It was totally an accident. He was absolutely 100%, completely asleep. But it was something that I never forgot, being punched in the face by my boyfriend. So anyway, but I just want to put that out there. Our issues did not revolve around him being physically abusive to me, just in case anybody's worrying. So anyway, it's been 20 years, 20 plus years since I have been to Las Vegas. So even though I kind of knew the city, I knew that I didn't know the city anymore. So we had all these plans, and we get on a plane, and being on a plane, in the I won't say post-COVID era, because it's not post-COVID, is it? We're not past. It's still happening. It's still happening. So I'm vaccinated. She's vaccinated. So there's that. And then obviously we followed all of the required and requested guidelines. And I'm very happy to know and to say that airlines are airports and airlines are requiring masks to be worn by everyone, regardless of vaccination status. As soon as you enter the airport, until the time that you leave the airport and go to a place where masks are not required, you are required to wear a mask. And that makes me feel much safer and much calmer about traveling in this day and age. And honestly, if airlines allow it after, when we finally get to the post-COVID era, I might just wear a mask on a plane all the time, because even before all of this, riding a plane has been like riding in a petri dish, because people get on a plane in all kinds of conditions. And I cannot tell you the number of times that I have gone on a trip and come home and immediately had a sinus infection or some kind of horrible cold, or if coming back from a convention. There's this thing called con crud. If you've ever been to a convention, like a gaming convention, maybe even StitchCon, anything like that, there's this thing called con crud, and that's because people come to places with whatever crap they have, and they have no, at least in America, this doesn't happen in Japan, I don't think. Places where people have a little bit more consideration for their fellow human beings. But certainly here in the States, people go to these recreational events regardless of what health state they're in, and they spread whatever. And because you're all in these spaces together, you get whatever, and you come home and you've got this cold or the flu or whatever. So anyway, my point is, I kind of want to have masks on the plane forever, because people are gross. Um, so, so yeah, we got on the plane, and I'm very happy to say that our plane rides. So, okay, so if you follow Rachel, which probably if you're here, Rachel Ray. She goes by Rachel Ray on the internet, not Rachel Ray the cook, but Rachel Ray of Rachel Ray Craft, and because you probably got here either through her or Michelle Bendy Stitchy, or Heike at Stone Cold Coffee Crafts. Regardless, if you came here totally on your own and don't know any of those people, then yay, that's awesome. But probably one of those three YouTubers, flosstubers, if you're here, because we have lots of fans in common, lots of viewers in common. So anyway, if you follow Rachel Ray, if you watch her whip-in chats, especially anytime around any travel that she's done, you know that she has this like horrible luck when it comes to traveling. And I am thankful I don't have any crazy stories to tell you. I have no crazy stories to tell you about any of the traveling. The traveling was what traveling is supposed to be. We show up at the airport, we wait for the plane to arrive, plane arrives on time, we get on the plane, trip is uneventful, we get off the plane, we catch the next one just fine, so on and so forth. Wash, rinse, repeat for a layover in each direction. And we got home right when we were supposed to get home. Everything's good. So that part, I have no stories to tell you, and I'm very, very happy about that. The only thing I will tell you is that in Vegas, because Vegas is Vegas, there are slot machines in the airport, and I did play some slots right before we left to come home back to Virginia. So that's the most interesting thing I can tell you about our entire flight experience, and I'm very happy for that. So we got to, let's see, we left here in the afternoon. We got to Vegas in the mid-evening, I'd say. It was like 8 o'clock. Oh, and here's Luna. What are you doing? Apparently it's getting close to lunchtime for the cats. Now they're going to bug me. What are you doing, Luna? You can just lay there and be good. I'll feed you in a little bit. Okay. So we got to Vegas 8-ish local time, so it's about 11 o'clock Eastern time. And we get to the hotel, we get all, we had pre-checked in and we had digital key cards. We didn't even have to go through the whole registration process, which was super nice because at no point during the entire time we were there did the hotel registration desk ever have less than 15 people in line. So, word to the wise. We stayed at the Luxor, which is the pyramid-shaped hotel towards the front end of the strip near the MGM. It's actually squarely, not squarely between. It connects. Oh, it is right in between. It's right in the middle of between the Excalibur and the Mandalay Bay Hotel. So it connects those two hotels. And there's a giant Sphinx out in the front. It's a pretty cool. It's kind of kitschy and like less luxurious inside than a lot of the other hotels, but it's kind of nifty because it's all, Egyptian themed with the Sphinx, and there's obelisks with hieroglyphics on them inside, and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of kitschy, but it's kind of nifty. And so we got all checked into the hotel, and the first thing we did was to go find food. And I had already decided that I really wanted to hit this Irish pub called Rira. So it turned out that the Irish pub was like walking distance, because it turned out that the Irish pub was in the on the way to like the Mandalay Bay shopping center area. So walked from the Luxor over to Mandalay Bay, hit Rira. Turned out that there was like an hour and a half wait for a table, but there were bar seats open. So we're like, sure, let's just take the bar. So here's where vacation begins, y'all. So the whole reason that I wanted to hit Rira was because they have an all-day full Irish breakfast. Rachel can tell you I am obsessed with a full Irish breakfast. So a full Irish, and hold on just a second because I have now hit the end of this section and I have to figure out what I'm supposed to do. Um, so yeah, I was looking at the pattern and I just did a wrong side row. Oh, I should have explained that to you too. So, it probably looks really odd to you the way that I'm knitting, because I knit in a continental style, but in a traditional style going in the appropriate direction. And what most people would do is they'd actually flip the work and they'd work on the wrong side and they would purl all the way across. Well, I don't like to purl if I don't have to. So inadvertently, when I started learning to knit, I learned how to mirror knit without realizing that's what I was doing. So when I'm coming back in this direction, I'm technically purling on the wrong side, but I'm doing it in a mirror knit style. So I'm working on the right side of the fabric, making purl stitches on the wrong side, and that's not going to make any sense to anybody but me. But so that stitch that I'm doing is actually a mirror knit purl. So yeah, at some point I'll probably do a knitting video to help show you that. So anyway, so I just finished a wrong side row, which is coming back in this direction. And I was looking at my next instruction, which is to do some stuff on a wrong side row, but I'm now on a right side row going back this way. But I was missing the fact that there is a line in between that says to work an increase row. So let me work the increase row. Yeah. Let's see. So I got to slip the edge. Okay. So full Irish breakfast. So Rachel can tell you I'm obsessed with full Irish breakfast. So what a full Irish breakfast consists of, and this changes somewhat depending on where in Ireland you are, especially if you are in Northern Ireland rather than the Republic of Ireland. So there are two different countries technically speaking. So Northern Ireland is a territory of the UK. It is part of the United Kingdom. It is separate from the rest of Ireland, which is its own sovereign country. Northern Ireland does stuff a little bit differently sometimes. Oh, I totally just missed that. Okay, give me just a second. Okay, I'm actually going to work this increase row quietly, because if I realized if I talk, I'm going to skip these yarn overs. So I'm just going to hush for a minute. I'm going to fast forward this section on the video, and yeah, I'll be back with you once I finish this. that I have this all knitted, what I'm going to do before I continue on is just count my stitches and make sure that I have 85 on the needle, just like I should. Because if I don't, I got to fix something somewhere. It's not a huge deal if I don't have the right number of stitches. It's not going to like massively affect the overall design, but what it will do is it'll prevent us from having these eyelets here in the right places and all that kind of stuff. So let me just count that. I'll be right back. Yep, looks like I got exactly what I need. So, okay. Now we're going to do the last row in this part of the repeat, and then we'll be back to the bind off. So, okay. I'll have to do some more counting before I get to the bind off. This goes a lot faster when I'm talking, I've noticed. So we're gonna, okay. This again is the mirror knitting that I'm doing. So because I'm doing it from the front side of the work, the stitches I'm making are actually the same as if I were purling on the wrong side. So makes total sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to anybody else. Okay. Where was I? Okay. So, the some of the Irish breakfast components are different depending on what part of Ireland you're in, especially if you're in Northern Ireland versus the Republic of Ireland. So I think that's where I was. So the basics that pretty much every full Irish breakfast has are 2 eggs, some rashers, which are Irish bacon, which are phenomenal. It's a little bit different than American bacon. Actually, it's a lot different than American bacon. It's something that's kind of a cross between country ham that we have, especially here in Virginia. It's similar to country ham, but it's not salty like country ham. It's more along the lines of the flavor of Canadian bacon. But you know, so it's a milder, not salt cured, smoked. Actually, I didn't think it is a smoked meat, but it's not a salty meat like country ham, but it has more of that texture than it does the bacon texture that we're used to here in the States. You also get Irish sausages, bangers. Actually, I think that's a UK term. But these Irish sausages are really fantastic. They're, again, a lot different than the breakfast sausages we get here in the States. They're much more hammy in flavor, very, very delicious. You also generally get a couple of slices, 1 or 2 slices each, of white and black pudding. So white and black pudding are both also sort of a sausagey kind of situation. So they're made in a sausage casing. They come in links, like big links, like kielbasa's almost, as far as size and shape go. And they have different components. Largely, they have some kind of oat or grain mixed in with some different kinds of meats, and I believe offal and stuff like that. So black pudding, I believe, contains, if I'm understanding correctly, it contains some amount of the animal's blood, because that's what makes it black. And white pudding is a milder version of a very similar food. So they have slightly different textures. They have slightly different flavors based on the stuff that's included. That's why you get a white pudding and a black pudding. I generally prefer white pudding. It's more like a hammy sausage with some other like grains mixed in there. It's quite tasty. Black pudding is not bad. I have liked some of the black puddings I've had, but not all of them. So you get all the different meats. Generally speaking, you'll get toast. You'll get possibly some beans, maybe some grilled tomatoes, or like flat iron grilled tomatoes, some mushrooms, sauteed mushrooms. So the beans and the mushrooms and the tomatoes kind of vary depending on where you're getting your Irish breakfast. The toast also can vary, because if you go farther north in the Republic, or especially if you're in Northern Ireland itself, you'll get things like potato farls or potato bread instead of, or in addition to, regular toast. And potato farls and potato bread are phenomenal. They're so good. So farls, I forget what farls means. It's something like squares or quarters or something like that. I looked it up at one point. But it's sort of like a potato pancake kind of situation. And potato bread can mean a lot of different things. It can mean a regular bread made out of some potato flour. It can mean something more along the lines of a fried potato pancake kind of situation. So yeah, so lots of different things, but the basis is the rashers and the ham, and the ham sausages, and the black and white puddings. So that's the main thing, and it's so good. So we went to Rira. And of course, I ordered the Irish breakfast. Oh, since we sat at the bar, so this is where the story really is. I'm talking about the food, but this is where the story is. So we sit at the bar, and as we are sitting at the bar, or getting seated at the bar, there's this gentleman already there, and the two seats that were open were next to him. So the hostess was asking him, if he minded if we sat there, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm getting ready to leave anyway," except that he didn't leave. So what had happened was, so as we're sitting down, he's like, "Oh, well, I'm getting ready to leave anyway," and then he starts chatting, which is fine. He's obviously had a few drinks, because, like I said, he was getting ready to head home. He's had a few drinks, um, and um, sorry, I just lost my place again. Okay, I'm gonna do this bind off, and then I'll. I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted. This is gonna be a multi-part rip and chat, I think. Okay. So now I need to bind off till I have 44 stitches. Let me count 44 stitches, and then and then I will be back. Now we're just gonna bind off. Okay, so this guy starts chatting, and I figure, okay, he's had a few drinks. He sees two apparently single women sit down at the. Why did I do that way? Okay. He sees two apparently single women sit down at the bar next to him, and we're in Vegas, so I'm sure various thoughts are occurring to this gentleman at the time. So he starts chatting with us, and I figure out, what the heck, we're in Vegas, this guy's in Vegas, it's all good. And he's getting very friendly, and then, of course, he's asking all kinds of questions and whatever, and offering us drinks and all this sort of stuff. And I really thought, because what usually happens in these situations is that the person chatting us up is actually chatting up the friend that is with me. And so I was the one sitting closest to him, but I really assumed that he was being friendly with me because he really wanted to chat with my friend. Well, come to find out, he was chatting with us both, but he really wanted to chat with me. And the next thing I know, it's all very innocuous. And I haven't mentioned that I'm married, because it doesn't really matter, because I'm not doing anything with this guy. I'm going to be going back to my hotel room with my friend. I'm certainly not, going anywhere with this dude that I don't know. Crap, I just lost there we go. So the next thing I know, as we're chatting, he suddenly comes out with, "So do you like kissing?" And I'm so flabbergasted. Like, at first I didn't even understand what he said. Didn't understand in the slightest, because that's not a question I expect a stranger to ask me. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. So completely flabbergasted, stunned into silence, once I finally understand what it is that he has said to me. And before my brain can get together to go, well, I kiss my husband, like, before I can even begin to form the words in my mind, my friend goes, "She likes kissing her husband." Like, just like boom. And yeah, and so our friend there at the bar was kind of shocked. He's like, "Really? You have a husband? Really?" And at that point, I show him my wedding ring. because yeah. And I'm like, absolutely, I'm married. And he's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, you're married. And he's like, real, he just like was completely mind blown. And which is, I don't understand why he was so mind blown. But and then he starts asking me questions like he didn't believe that I was married. And he's like, so what's your husband's name? I'm like, oh, his name is Adam. And he's like, oh, and he's like, well, is Adam a good guy? I'm like, absolutely. And does Adam love you? Yes, absolutely. You know, it was just like, he just, I guess he was still trying to figure out how he was going to get in on that. So, you know, at that point, it's, you know, the good thing in my mind was that he wasn't one of those jerky guys who was like, why didn't you tell me you were married and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, I wasn't flirting with him. Like, if it had come to that, at no point was I flirting with him. I was, you know, having a conversation with a person at a bar. Um, you know, so like I said, I didn't feel the need at any point to tell him I was married because I had no intention of doing anything with this person anyway. Like I'm talking to a guy who's being friendly at a bar, you know, and you know, but like I said, so he didn't take it in an angry way, which some men can do. He took it in a disappointed way, which was kind of flattering. And he did mention a couple of times, well, Adam's a really lucky guy. And I'm like, yeah, I guess he is. So eventually he wanders off to his room, and my friend and I are just sitting there at the bar finishing our Irish breakfasts and our drinks and stuff, and just kind of laughing about the whole thing. And I at the end of the day, I took it for a compliment. You know, that he was interested enough in me to want to hit me up, because like people don't flirt with me. Like I don't know what it is about me. People don't try to pick me up. People don't flirt with me. So I really didn't expect that it was me that he was going to end up hitting on. I really thought it was my friend, and my friend is totally single. And he wasn't like, you know, he wasn't like a super hot guy. He wasn't a guy that's like, oh, I hope this guy hits on me or anything like that. Not that I'm looking for that anyway. He wasn't a super hot guy, but he was by no means any kind of troll. He was a decent looking dude. And he seemed like he was probably, you know, a nice enough guy if he were sober, you know. And my friend is completely single, so I figured if he's trying to, you know, if he's talking to us so that he can talk to her, then, you know, that's up to her if she's interested in that. But yeah, so ultimately, like I said, I took it for a compliment. It became a funny anecdote, and you know, we joked about it the whole rest of the time. So that's how our week in Vegas started. Was with this dude at the Rera pub, asking if I liked to kiss. And things got pretty wacky. I don't know if they got wackier than that, but yeah, the week was fun. It was definitely an experience. And yeah, I'm not sure how long I've talked already. I might have to go ahead and pause this as a part one. Well, maybe I'll just keep talking. I'll keep talking. I can cut it up later if I need to. I don't want to go like too much longer than an hour and a half maybe, but I don't know how long I've already recorded. Anyway, so that was our first night in Vegas, our first full day in Vegas. Let me tell you all this. So, we had plans, like the main two plans we had when we went to Vegas were to visit the Grand Canyon, and we had already scheduled a tour that was happening on our last full day in Vegas. And we wanted to go to the Morimoto restaurant, and we had reservations for the evening of our first night in Vegas. So those were our main plans. There were several other things that my friend wanted to do while we were in Vegas, including stopping at various casinos to see certain sites at those casinos, and all that kind of stuff. So we spent our first day just kind of wandering around, checking out those different things that she was interested in seeing, including the Bellagio and the gardens at the Bellagio. which I took lots of pictures of, and I shared some of those on Instagram already. And we walked and we walked and we walked. It started out with breakfast at Hash House A Go Go. Let me tell y'all, this is a fantastic place to eat. Why do I feel like you can't see what I'm knitting? So Hash House A Go Go is in the link, which is like next to Caesar's Palace or Harrah's or both. And it is this kind of like, the food there is this like trippy diner vibe kind of food, but it is, the restaurant itself is much more like mainstream and stuff. And they have these like these food stacks. And what my friend ordered was this sage fried chicken stack Benedict thing. Oops, I just lost my stitch. No, come back. Okay, there it is. Okay, let me try this again. I have a hard time. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. I don't know. I have a hard time pulling my stitch over top of the other stitch because everything wants to come off the needle all at one time. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now I'm where I need to be. And what I need to do now is the thing that I do. Okay, so now I just slip this. I take this marker off because otherwise it's going to mess me up, I think. Okay, so then I just slip this and then I knit to the end of the row. So then we're good. Okay. I'm realizing that I'm like leaning over the camera to see, and it's kind of giving me a crick in my neck. Okay. So yeah, it's got kind of a trippy vibe, and she got this stack. So the sage fried chicken stack. So it's got this gigantic piece of sage fried chicken, which is so tasty. It is piled up on top of a biscuit and mashed potatoes and scrambled eggs and this piece of griddled mozzarella cheese and spinach and tomato and it's just like all the things. And on top of that is this fabulous gravy that they make, which it's hard to describe because it wasn't a hollandaise. It had a tangy sort of vinegariness to it, but it was a rich, yummy gravy. It was so delicious. So what we did is my brother had been to this restaurant before, and he told me, he warned me, he's like, their entrees are huge. Y'all are going to want to share. Well, I didn't actually want to ask my friend to split one meal. Because we were in Vegas and we're indulging and it was vacation. And so what I suggested was that I will get a different thing for breakfast and you get what you want. And then, because I knew it was going to be too much food and it's like, we'll kind of share back and forth. So she got that and I got this banana pecan French toast that was like, oh, it was really, really good. The pecans were like out of this world. And so I technically had my own breakfast, but she shared with me because it was way too much food for her. So it was so good, so good. And they have these specialty Bloody Marys, and you can get all the things. You can make it Cadillac with the special vodka, and you can do the I'm getting like too high up in the camera. Maybe I'll just push the camera out this way, and then I won't feel so much like I'm. There we go. Okay. Hopefully you're mostly just listening, and so it doesn't matter how weird the camera is. Anyway, so you can get the high shelf, the top shelf alcohol, and you can get double shots and all this sort of stuff. And it turns out, we didn't know this at the time, it turns out you get to take home the glass too. So we got fancy Bloody Marys, we got the amazing breakfast, and that was the start of our day as we wandered around to all the different places. And boy, did we wander. So I recently got a Fitbit. It's probably been a month or two now that I got a new Fitbit. And so my average, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, my average steps for the week generally runs around 20,000, maybe 25 if I'm like super industrious that week. Because admittedly, I live a very sedentary life. Um, but in that one day in Las Vegas, we walked almost 17,000 steps, which my Fitbit tells me is like 8 miles, 8 miles in one day. And some of you are probably listening going, 8 miles, I do that on a easy day. Yeah, I don't do that. I don't, I'm an inside cat. I don't do outdoor things. I don't go walking around the neighborhood. I should go walking around the neighborhood, but I don't. Um, and yeah, so I was supposed to make a mark down here. That's what I'm missing. Okay. Now I get to work the stockinette stuff again. Um, Oh, actually, yeah, okay. I gotta do the wrong side row and then I can come back. Yes, okay. Okay, I know what I'm doing. I said this was going to be easy to do while I'm talking, but that seems to be a lie, doesn't it? So we walked all around Vegas. We saw all the things. We did all the things. And then ultimately, we went back to the room for a little bit and got ready to go to Morimoto's. And Morimoto's, let me tell you, oh, it was so good. It was so good. So I had debated with myself because they have Wagyu beef at Morimoto's. And I had debated with myself about whether I was going to spring for like actual Wagyu beef, if I was going to get a steak or, something like that. It's quite expensive. If you're not familiar with it, it's a certain, and I don't know all the details. I just know that it has to do with how the individual cow is raised and how um, the meat is prepared and all that stuff. It has largely to do with the type of cow and with how the cow is raised. So there is technically Wagyu beef in the United States that's produced in the United States because it has to do with how the cow is raised and so on and so forth. But the Japanese Wagyu is highly sought after and much more expensive. So you can get domestic, what they call domestic Wagyu beef. And you can also get Japanese Wagyu beef, and there are different grades available at Morimoto's Steakhouse. So Morimoto, for those who are uninitiated, he's one of the original Iron Chefs. Now he's an accomplished and famous chef in his own right long before he joined anything on the Food Network. But if I remember correctly, he's like one of the OG Iron Chefs, like when Iron Chef was the original Japanese iteration, and then he was part of the original American version of Iron Chef when that started up on the Food Network ages and ages ago. So he's an OG, like the original Iron Chef. He was the one that everybody used to compete against back in the day when it was brand new, long before Bobby Flay and anybody else was in the picture. So he's a big deal. So I had debated with myself. Ultimately, I decided that I really didn't want to go quite that whole hog. And I ended up getting the Wagyu beef carpaccio, which, oh my gosh, y'all, it was so good, so good. I think I posted pictures of that up on Instagram too, so go look at that. If you like beef. If you're vegan or vegetarian, you're probably not going to enjoy much of what I talk about with my food. I like vegetables, but I am definitely a carnivore. So yeah, the Wagyu beef carpaccio was fantastic. I got a sushi platter. My friend got the soy, what was it? It's like soy cod. It was definitely cod. I can't remember what the like soy miso cod or something like that. She let me try a little bit of hers and it was so delicious. Oh, she also got this pork belly appetizer that was out of this world. Oh, I can't tell you how much I love pork belly. And it was so beautifully prepared and so tasty. And it was served on top of rice congee, which I could take or leave, but the pork belly, oh my gosh, y'all, so good. And then for dessert, we weren't even going to get dessert because we had ordered way too much food, because that's how these things go. But the table next to us got this dessert and the waiter set it on fire and we watched and we were just mesmerized and we're like, okay, we have to get that. What is that? What is that thing? We must also have that thing. So, okay, I'm not to the point where I'm marking these yet. Okay. So we ordered it. It turns out it was called the fire chocolate tart or something like that. Oops, no, this is This is a slip stitch. That's not a knit. Okay. Um, so we ordered the fire chocolate. And oh my gosh. So if y'all have ever seen these desserts that people get where it's like a ball of chocolate and the server, the waiter, whoever will pour alcohol over top of the chocolate and set it on fire so that the chocolate melts onto the dessert that's hiding inside the ball. That's what this was. That's what this was. I have a clip. I might insert it here. Um, we'll see. But I did actually record it while it was happening, so I might throw that in here. But oh my gosh, it was so amazing. The experience was just so awesome because I've always wanted to have a dessert like that and never been anywhere where that was offered. Where I could get that. So that was super, super exciting. And the dessert itself was delicious. It was like a s'mores, but like a super high class s'mores. So there was like a graham cracker something and some chocolate, rich chocolate mousse, and then this super light whipped marshmallow on top of it, and then all of the chocolate from the chocolate dome had melted over top of everything, and it was so good. It was so delicious. So yeah, so that was Morimoto's. It was fantastic. I would love to go back. But yeah, it was so good. It was so good. So that was our first day in Vegas. Lots and lots of walking, lots of phenomenal stuff, multiple yummy desserts, because we did eat fantastic wonderfulness at the Bellagio. There was a little bit of gambling. I don't do neither my friend nor I do like the table games. We don't do blackjack and poker and or craps or any of that stuff. We just do the slots. It's funny. She's really particular. She wants to do the old school quarter slots. That's all she wants to do is the old school quarter slots. And it's hard to find those in Vegas because everything is now these fake penny slots. They say that they're penny because theoretically it used to be on these types of machines, you literally could bet a penny and you could play for however long, playing just one line on the slot machine for 1 penny. But nowadays, your minimum bet is between 50 and 75 cents. Um, Actually, sometimes up to 80 cents on these kinds of machines. So they call themselves a penny slot because you're paying a penny per line, but they have anywhere between 50 and 100 lines that you're betting a penny on. And you can, of course, bet more if you want. But yeah. So I go for the ones that are like video games. So I like the ones that have lots of mini games that pop up when you do stuff. So I was playing things like there was a Little Shop of Horrors, one that had all these mini games. There was The Hobbit. There was Willy Wonka. There was what else? I saw a Sex in the City, but I didn't play the Sex in the City one. Um, I'm trying to think. There was one that was similar. Oh, there was a Friends one, I think. I think I played the Friends one for a little bit. Um, something else. Something else fantasy based that I can't think of, but my favorite one was the Game of Thrones one. Oh, I found Plants versus Zombies, and also a Farmville one. But my favorite one was the Game of Thrones one. And the reason the Game of Thrones one was my favorite, and I have some clips of this too, is because the mini games involved obviously the dragons and stuff, and it was so awesome. And I played the various of the casinos have the same games, because they're almost like arcade games. So just like you might see Galaga in every single arcade back in the day, in most every casino, you're going to see the same ones. So the Willy Wonka ones were everywhere. The Game of Thrones one, the Hobbits one, all that sort of stuff. We're in most all the casinos. So after I discovered the Game of Thrones slot machine, I went looking for it everywhere we went. And on almost all of the Game of Thrones machines that I played on, I won some money. Now, when I say I won some money, what I really mean is that I spent a bunch of money, but I won some of it back. So ultimately, I'm down money in Vegas, but I'm down less than I could have been because I actually did have some decent wins. So yeah. But the Game of Thrones one was so fun because the mini games would pop up and you'd get extra spins and the dragons would do stuff, and it was just all kinds of awesome. Plus, the Game of Thrones machine had all the Game of Thrones sounds. It had the music, and it had this awesome like vibrating chair. So when big things would happen, the chair would be like, it was like riding a ride. It was it was it was all kinds of fun and exciting. So I really enjoyed that. But I didn't spend a ton of money or a ton of time on the slot machines just because I didn't want to. I'm that kind of person that I might throw way too much money into a slot machine if I let myself sit there. So yeah, so I gambled a little bit and I won a little bit, but mostly I just played. Mostly I just spent money to play a video game. That's kind of how I thought about it. So let's see, our second day in Vegas. What did we do the second day? So we hit the first day. We did breakfast. We went to the Venetian. We checked out the Cake Boss's bakery, which was a little underwhelming, to be honest. We went to the Bellagio, and the Bellagio's patisserie was exactly what I was looking for in a Vegas dessert shop. So that had all kinds of awesome stuff. Plus, the gardens were really beautiful. Where else did we go? We rode on the metro, or I'm sorry, the monorail. We rode on the monorail, so we saw kind of the monorail view of all of the Vegas Strip. So that was kind of fun. I know we saw some other casinos, and I can't think of what they are right now. The day kind of all runs together because we just ran from place to place to place, and it was like at a breakneck speed. It felt like to me. So, and then we had dinner. So the next day, we started out our day by going to Fremont Street. So Fremont Street is old Vegas. Like that's the original Vegas Strip is Fremont Street. And now everything has moved to Las Vegas Boulevard. And it's so built up and it's so huge and there's all these lights and it's very commercial. And let me mark this before I forget that I have done this row. Okay. But you go to Fremont Street and it's what, like anytime you see an old movie that's talking about Vegas or anything like that, it's like the Fremont Street version of Vegas. And of course it's a little sad looking now in some ways because it's so much smaller than the rest of Vegas and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, it's still a really nifty kind of area. So they call it the Fremont Experience now. Can you see what I'm doing? They call it the Fremont Experience, and I'm probably better off if I do this actually looking at the camera instead of looking around the camera at my work. If I look at the screen. Anyway, so they call it the Fremont Experience. You've got, I don't know, 5 or 6 of the old hotels, including the Four Queens, the Golden Nugget, what is it? Binion's, I think, which used to be called something else, but they changed the name because I think the former name was derogatory. I can't, and there's like the Plaza at one end. Yeah, so it's, you know, but the Golden Nugget and the Four Queens, those are the ones that most folks remember, and the Fremont Hotel. And the nifty thing is that they have the entire street where those hotels reside, the street in between them, is covered over with this massive video screen. So not only is it covered, so it's an open air market essentially now because you can walk underneath this cover and it actually is a comfortable place to walk in the Vegas heat because it was, no lie, y'all, it was over 110 during the day, and it did not get below, I think, 95 at night. I have never been anywhere so hot in my entire life. So having that cover made it like relatively comfortable to walk down that little strip. And it was a much easier walk to deal with because the hotels are so much smaller and it's only like 2 city blocks and you know, all this sort of stuff. And we got 99-cent shrimp cocktail at the Fremont Hotel and the best shrimp egg roll I've had in my entire life at the Fremont Hotel. Uh, and just outside the Fremont Experience, like halfway down the next block, is this place called Dirt Dog. So my friend had heard about it. I don't remember how she heard about it, but she heard about Dirt Dog, and she's like, I really want to try out this place. And it turned out it was really, really convenient to where we were. So we just walked down there, and they have these amazing, you need to check them out on their website. But I think their original location is in LA, because they're like their original one's called Dirt Dog LA. And they have all these amazing hot dogs with just like all kinds of different stuff on them. So there's like I can't even remember what all the different combinations are, but the hot dog that I got was the elote hot dog. So if you're familiar with elote, it's like Mexican street corn. And generally speaking, when you get Mexican street corn, when you get elote as a street food, it's an ear of corn that's got some mayonnaise and some seasonings and spices. Like chili powder and maybe some cilantro and parsley, and then they sprinkle cojita cheese on it, and it's just this amazingly like sweet, spicy, all the things kind of snack, and you usually get it as a near corn, like a corn on the cob. But they had a hot dog that was an elote hot dog. So it was their giant, like all beef hot dog that was delicious. It tasted like the hot dog itself was delicious. Served in this split bun that was very similar in my mind to like the fantastic buttered split bun that you get if you get a lobster roll in Boston, like an authentic, real Boston lobster roll. It was that kind of buttered, grilled, like soft bread, delicious, with this giant hot dog in it. And then it had the sweet corn and the mayo and the spices and the cojita cheese. And it was just, oh, it was so good. It was the best hot dog I've ever, oh, and it was wrapped in bacon. The hot dog was wrapped in bacon. It was the best hot dog ever, y'all. It was so good. So Fremont Street was fantastic. The only part that was less fun was trying to catch a ride to get back to the hotel after Fremont Street. Because let me tell y'all, so here's the thing about Vegas. Like, if you are the kind of person who can walk all over the place, then you really could walk all of Vegas if you really wanted to, when it's not 120 degrees outside. A lot of the hotels are connected and you can stay inside as much as possible, but there are times when you have to walk outside. Um, but I'm not a great walker. I don't have the ability to walk miles and miles and miles, and that's what the Vegas Strip is. It's miles and miles and miles of walking. And so, we were catching lifts and stuff, not if we're going from hotel to hotel. We didn't like, take a cab from the Excalibur straight to the Luxor when those are connected or anything like that. But we would, we'd go from one end of the strip to the other, or, from our hotel to a hotel at the other end of the strip, that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because Vegas is set up fairly well for Lyft and Uber and rideshare drivers. The problem as a passenger is that it is difficult to know from where you are in whatever area you're in, how far away the pickup location might be from your specific location at that moment. So I might be somewhere in the Luxor Hotel and want to get a ride share, but then I have to somehow find out where to pick up the ride share from the hotel. And the thing I noticed, and I guess this makes sense from a capitalist standpoint, the thing I noticed is that all of the signs within the casinos are really designed to make you walk as far as possible, because what they want you to do is take the most circuitous route through the casino to get to wherever you're going, so that you will be in the casino for as long as possible. And I get that, but when I'm trying to get out of the casino to get to a rideshare, I would like to not have to walk a mile and a half to get from inside the casino to the rideshare. And some of these rideshare locations were at the opposite end of the casino. down multiple levels to a parking level underground. You know, it was just kind of, you know, it was a lot. And worse than that is if you're outside trying to figure out where you can get picked up, because you can't just get picked up by a lift on the side of the street. And even if you could, it's hard to know through the app exactly where you are, because the GPS locator can be off by quite a bit. So trying to figure out from outside of a hotel when there are no signs where the nearest rideshare pickup is, oh my gosh. So that was much of a headache, very, very much of a headache. So yeah, and then of course it's 120 degrees. And I'm not even exaggerating by that much. Uh, it may not have actually gotten to 120 specifically, but I know one day it was at least 100. It was, I think the max temperature I saw was 117. So I'm not exaggerating much. Anyway, so yeah, that was the least fun part of the experience at the Fremont, was trying to get the rideshare back. Oh, but the other thing about the Fremont experience is that there's all these street performers and stuff. So that was interesting too. Though there was the naked man. That's how he describes himself. He wasn't actually naked. He was all but naked. He had what amounted to a G-string kind of situation, that covered his most private parts, but sort of wrapped up around his neck. It was really odd, and I was very uncomfortable. I'm like, there's far more of this man hanging out than I would really like to see. So there was that. There were also the Chippendale dancers, which was like, okay. It was funny because I kept asking my friend, why are they so small? Because I guess I have kind of a jaded idea of what those type of men are supposed to look like. I mean, they looked, muscly enough and handsome, I guess, by a certain standard. But they were so short, and I was just like, they're so tiny. Why are they? They're like little miniature dancing men. I don't understand. Anyway, so. So after Fremont Street, we decided that we were going to go to Area 15, which is this crazy kind of psychedelic hangout place, where there are a bunch of different kinds of experiences, as well as Meow Wolf. Now, um, I think at this point, because this part of the video I've been talking for 47 minutes, and I think that's a good spot. I'm going to go ahead and pause right here. So that was our first 2 days in Vegas. No, it was our first day and a half in Vegas. Sorry, I forgot the mic was there. So that was our first day and a half in Vegas. I will talk about Meow Wolf and the rest of the trip, because there was Meow Wolf, there was more stuff that evening, and then there was the Grand Canyon. So I will go ahead and stop here. I'm just changing to autofocus so you can actually see that. I've done a lot of knitting since we've been on here. So I finished this section right here, and actually I'm liking how that's looking. So I think I probably should have considered this an Aran weight from the beginning. But I'm liking the waves here. And this is such an easy pattern. I probably will do multiples of these. I normally don't redo a pattern once I've done it once, but this one is such a nifty kind of thing, and I would like to see it in some fingering weight. So anyway, so I've done quite a bit of knitting while we've been on here. I will come back with another whip and chat at hopefully not too far in the future to talk about the rest of our second day in Vegas, and to talk about the Grand Canyon. So in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed this, my rambliness and my random discussions and all that kind of stuff. And I hope you're well. I hope you're having the best day, weekend that is available to you. And I hope to chat with you again soon.